Most Christians think prayer is about getting God to change your circumstances. But there's a 3,000-year-old Jewish prayer that does the opposite. It changes what you're able to see while your circumstances stay exactly the same. It's called Birkat HaIlanot, the blessing of the trees. And here's what makes it radical. You can only pray it once a year. Miss your window and you're locked out for 12 months. The rabbis designed it that way on purpose because this isn't a prayer for breakthrough. It's a prayer for awakening. See, most of us are begging Yahweh to move mountains when He's already planted orchards. We're asking for miracles when resurrection is blooming right in front of us and we're too blind to notice. The problem isn't that God's not doing anything. The problem is that you've trained your eyes to only see what's dying. If you're hungry for biblical truths that transform, hit subscribe and the bell now to join our journey. Because what I'm about to show you isn't feel-good motivation. It's a biblical principle Yeshua demonstrated over and over. One that separates people who stay stuck from people who step into new seasons. And it starts with learning to see what's already growing.
Now here's an uncomfortable question. What if you're not waiting on God? What if God's waiting on you to notice what He's already doing? Think about it. You pray for direction. You fast for breakthrough. You're begging heaven to show up. Meanwhile, you walk past the same dead situations every day, cataloging everything that's not working, building a case for why this season will never end. The Israelites did the exact same thing. Ecclesiastes 3:1 says, "To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven." Sounds comforting, right? Except here's the part we skip. Between every season is a gap. And in that gap, most people don't wait. They quit. They stood at the edge of the promised land for 40 years, not because they couldn't cross the Jordan, but because they couldn't see past what they'd lost in Egypt. Now, here's where it gets interesting. In ancient Israel, every spring around the Hebrew month of Nissan, something would happen. The almond trees would explode with white blossoms, fig trees would bud, and faithful Jews would stop everything, walk to the orchards, and pray Birkat HaIlanot. The blessing goes, "Blessed are you, Yahweh, our God, King of the universe, who has made nothing lacking in His world and created in it good creatures and good trees for human beings to enjoy." One prayer, one moment, once a year. But here's what most people miss. This wasn't about appreciating nature. This was warfare. Because when you're stuck in a dead season, the enemy doesn't need to keep you in chains. He just needs to keep you staring at the tomb, blind to the fact that while you're mourning what died, Yahweh is already growing what's next. This prayer forced them to look up, to acknowledge life was happening whether they felt ready or not. And that's the principle most believers never learn. Resurrection doesn't wait for your permission. Yeshua, our Savior Jesus, knew this better than anyone, and He used trees to teach it. Matthew 24:32, He's talking about the end times, heavy stuff, and suddenly He pivots
Now learn this parable from the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. Wait, why trees? Why not clouds splitting or trumpets blaring? Because trees don't lie about what season you're in. In 1st century Judea, the fig tree was Israel's spiritual barometer. When Yeshua cursed the barren fig tree in Mark 11, he wasn't having a bad day. He was making a prophetic point. You can look alive, leaves, branches, religious activity, but produce nothing. But flip it. When the fig tree blooms, that's your signal. Not that something might happen, that it's already happening. New season, new life, time to move. Here's what's wild. The Hebrew word for tree is et. It shows up 328 times in Scripture. And almost every time, trees mark divine encounters. Abraham met Yahweh by the oaks of Mamre. Moses met him at a bush that burned but wouldn't die. The tree of life stood in Eden and will stand again in Revelation 22. Trees aren't background scenery in the Bible. They're prophetic markers. Now look at Psalm 1:3. The blessed person is like a tree planted by rivers of water that brings forth its fruit in its season, whose leaf also shall not wither. Catch that phrase, in its season. Not your season, not when you're ready, not when you feel strong enough, in his season. And here's the part that wrecks most of us. The tree doesn't get to choose when spring comes. It just has to be ready to bloom when it does. That's what Birkat HaIlanot trains you to do. It forces you to acknowledge something most believers fight. Yahweh's resurrection power operates on his calendar, not yours, and it's already moving. The question isn't whether spring is coming. The question is, will you see it when it arrives? Here's the mystery that will either free you or offend you. Yahweh never stops creating. You just stop noticing. Birkat HaIlanot isn't a magic spell. It's not a formula to make God do something new. It's a spiritual discipline that breaks the hypnosis of despair. Because here's what happens in the dead seasons. You develop tunnel vision. Psychologists call it negative confirmation bias. You start collecting evidence that nothing's working, that nothing will ever work, that this time it's really over. You get what I call tomb eyes. Mary Magdalene had them. John 20:15, resurrection morning. Yeshua is standing right there, alive, breathing, risen. And she thinks he's the gardener. She's so locked into death that she can't recognize life standing 3 feet away. And Yeshua had to say her name, Mary, just to break the trance. That's what this prayer does. It says your name. It snaps you out of the death spiral. The rabbis teach that Birkat HaIlanot can only be prayed when you see the blossoms for the first time that year. Not the second sighting, not the third, the first moment you notice. Why? Because that first glance is pure. It's before your cynicism talks you out of it. Before you start listing all the reasons this year won't be different. Before you explain away the evidence of new life. It's the moment your soul remembers, oh, Yahweh keeps his word. Now listen carefully. I'm not telling you to ignore your pain. I'm not saying fake it till you make it. And I'm definitely not preaching some prosperity nonsense where you just declare things into existence. What I am saying is this: there is a difference between waiting in faith and waiting in unbelief. And the difference is what you're looking for. Are you scanning the horizon for blossoms? Or are you building shrines to dead branches? Because Yahweh is moving right now in your life. But if all you see is what's not happening, you'll miss what is. Too many believers are waiting for the burning bush when Yahweh is showing up in buds.
So here's how you actually live this. 3 steps. No fluff. Step 1. Identify your Nissan. Nissan is the first month of the Hebrew sacred calendar. It's when Passover happens, when Israel walked out of slavery, when death passed over and life broke through. You need to stop living by the calendar everyone else sees and start asking, what is Yahweh trying to birth right now in my life? Not what you wish was happening, not what you think should be happening. What's actually trying to emerge? Sit down with a journal. Ask him, what am I missing? What are you growing that I'm too distracted to see? And then, this is critical, write down what comes, even if it seems small, especially if it seems small. Because new life never looks impressive at first. It's just a bud, just a hint of green, but it's enough. Step 2. Create your Birkat HaIlanot moment. This is both literal and spiritual, and you need both. Find a blooming tree. I don't care if you live in the city. Find a park, a yard, something that's growing. Stand there and let the physical reality of new life preach to you. Then pray. Not some scripted religious performance, just honest words. Yahweh, the God of Israel, I thank you that you never stop creating. I declare that what looked finished is coming back to life. Open my eyes to see what you're doing right now. Not what I wish you were doing, but what you're actually doing. I refuse to worship the tomb when you're offering me resurrection. In Yeshua's name. That's it. Simple, true. Step 3. Stop rehearsing the funeral. This is where most people lose it, because this step requires you to do something that feels impossible. Stop building your identity around what didn't work. Paul wrote in Philippians 3:13, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forward to those things which are ahead. That word forgetting in Greek is epilanthenamai. It doesn't mean you pretend it didn't happen. It means you intentionally disregard it. You strip it of power. You stop letting it define your future. You have to stop telling the story of the dead season like it's your testimony. Stop gathering evidence for why it's too late. Stop building monuments to disappointment. Because every minute you spend staring at the barren branch is a minute you're not looking at the blossom. And here's the promise that's worth everything. When you train your eyes to see what Yahweh is growing now, not what died last year, everything shifts. Not because your circumstances magically change overnight, but because you stop living like you're trapped in Egypt when he already opened the Red Sea. You start moving while everyone else is still debating whether God is real. So here's what I need from you right now. Type
beginning in the comments to declare that you're ready to see what Yahweh is growing in your life. Not what you wish he was doing, what he's actually doing. Let's flood this section with faith. And if this message hit you where it needed to, smash that like button. Share this video with someone who's stuck between seasons. Let's spread this truth. And want to go deeper with Yahweh? Grab my free guide, 7 Hidden Names of God, linked in the description or our latest community post. These names will completely transform how you pray and how you see his character. And listen, subscribe and hit that bell so you never miss the mysteries we're uncovering together, because this is just the beginning. I know some of you are in the hardest season you've ever faced. The wait has been brutal, the grief is real, and you're wondering if spring is even possible anymore. But here's what I need you to hear. Yahweh doesn't waste winters. Every barren season is preparing soil for something you couldn't carry before. Every delay is building strength you're going to need. Every closed door is protecting you from something that would have destroyed what's coming. So, keep your eyes open, watch for the blossoms. Because when you see that first sign of life, that little hint of green pushing through dead ground, that's your moment. That's resurrection whispering your name. Don't miss it. Subscribe and hit the bell to join us on this journey of uncovering Yahweh's mysteries. Until then, may you see what he's doing, and may you have the courage to begin again. Shalom.